Sir, stop right there. I need you to step aside.
Is there a problem? I'm boarding this flight.
Not today. I've got questions. You don't match the profile. That doesn't make sense. I'm a U.S. citizen. My ID is right here. Sir, arguing isn't going to help you. Turn around and keep your hands visible. I'm not resisting. I'm asking why I'm being detained. We'll sort that out after. Right now, you're not flying.
Gate B4 at Sky Harbor International was packed when it happened. Tuesday evening, 6:47 p.m. The kind of pre-boarding chaos where travelers jockey for overhead bin space and gate agents prepare for the cattle call of zone assignments. Lieutenant Silas Thorne had arrived at the gate early for his flight to D.C., a medical conference where he was scheduled to present on combat trauma surgery techniques. Still in his civilian travel clothes, charcoal slacks, a button-down shirt, sport coat, his carry-on containing his VA surgeon credentials, and his Metro PD badge alongside medical journals and presentation notes. He was reviewing his presentation slides on his tablet when 3 ICE agents approached from the jetway entrance, cutting through the crowd of waiting passengers. Their body cameras were rolling, recording what would become the most expensive boarding delay in federal court history. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, you need to hit that subscribe button. Stories like this don't get told unless we tell them, and your support means these videos reach people who need to see what's really happening out here. Agent Jettison Reed led the approach. His partners, Agents Gable and Vane, flanking wide like they were corralling livestock. Thorne saw them coming, read the tactical spacing, the hands hovering near duty belts, the body language of men who'd already decided he was a problem. His cop brain, refined through 18 years on the force and countless high-stakes situations in both the precinct and the operating room, cataloged it all in the second it took them to close the distance. Federal agents, immigration and customs enforcement patches visible on their tactical vests, looking at him like he was prey instead of a fellow law enforcement officer and federal employee waiting to board a flight. He knew where this was going before Reed opened his mouth. He'd heard the stories from colleagues, read the reports, understood the patterns of airport profiling that treated citizenship as something you had to prove on demand. He just never imagined it would happen to him. Not here. Not at a domestic gate where he was traveling for a federal medical conference. Not when he had both a police badge and federal surgeon credentials that should have identified him as exactly the kind of person these agents were supposed to be working with, not against. Sir, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So we need to see your boarding pass and identification. Thorne's hands stayed visible, instinctively moving to a non-threatening position despite the absurdity of having to treat fellow federal agents like a threat. 18 years as a cop, 12 years as a VA surgeon, and he was being approached like a suspect at an airport gate. Officers, I'm Lieutenant Silas Thorne, Metro Police Department. I'm also Dr. Thorne, a surgeon at the VA Medical Center. I'm traveling to Washington, D.C. for a medical conference. Is there something I can help you with? Reed's expression remained flat, bureaucratic, the kind of studied neutrality that came from someone who'd stopped seeing people as individuals. We're conducting verification operations at international terminals. Yes, we need to see documentation proving your legal status in this country. This is a domestic flight to D.C., Thorne said evenly, and my identification is in my wallet. My federal medical credentials are in my carry-on. I'm happy to show you both. Don't reach for anything. Keep your hands where we can see them. Around them, the gate area had gone quiet. Passengers waiting to board had stopped their conversations, watching with the kind of uncomfortable awareness that comes from witnessing something wrong unfold in public. A businessman near the window had his phone out, recording. A young woman with her laptop paused mid-typing, her expression shifting from confusion to recognition. And near the gate desk, passenger Briggs Pendergast, a civil rights attorney heading home from a deposition, had already pulled out his phone, his legal instincts telling him to document what was about to become evidence in a federal lawsuit. The most expensive boarding delay in federal court history was about to cost the government $16.8 million. And it hadn't even occurred to Agent Jettison Reed that detaining a police lieutenant and VA surgeon at a domestic gate might be a catastrophic mistake that would change federal enforcement policy forever. Gate B4 at Sky Harbor International Airport was designed to handle the controlled chaos of modern air travel. Wide seating areas with charging stations, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the tarmac, digital boards displaying departure information in crisp LED clarity. On a Tuesday evening at 6:47 p.m., it was packed with the usual mix of business travelers, families, and tourists waiting to board Flight 847 to Washington Reagan National. Lieutenant Silas Thorne sat in the second row of seats near the window, his carry-on tucked beside him, reviewing presentation slides on his tablet. The medical conference started Thursday morning, and his session on combat trauma surgery techniques, innovations he'd developed treating veterans at the Phoenix 5A Medical Center, was Friday afternoon. 12 years as a VA surgeon, 18 years as a Metro PD lieutenant, and he still got nervous before presentations. He was dressed for travel comfort and professional arrival. Charcoal slacks, a pressed button-down shirt in light blue, a navy sport coat that could transition from airplane to conference venue. His carry-on contained his laptop, medical journals, presentation materials, and the credentials that identified him as both a police officer and a federal employee, Metro PD badge and ID, VA Medical Center credentials, TSA pre-check documentation. The gate agent had just announced pre-boarding for families and passengers needing assistance when Thorne noticed the shift in energy near the jetway entrance. 3 men in tactical vests moving through the crowd with purpose. Not TSA, not airport security, not airline personnel. ICE patches visible even from 30 feet away. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, operating in an airport terminal, scanning passengers like they were conducting a raid instead of maintaining transportation security. Thorne's cop brain registered details automatically. Tactical vests, suggesting body armor, duty belts with visible weapons, body cameras active and recording, your radio communications indicating coordinated operation. Not random, planned. The lead agent's eyes swept across the waiting passengers, businessmen in suits, families with strollers, college students with backpacks, and landed on Thorne. Everything changed. The agent said something to his partners. They adjusted their positions, spreading out slightly, hands dropping to rest near duty belts. Pre-contact positioning, the kind of tactical spacing you used when approaching a potential threat. Thorne had used that exact formation hundreds of times in his law enforcement career. He recognized it instantly, along with what it meant. These agents had identified a target, and somehow, inexplicably, that target was him. He closed his tablet, set it carefully in his carry-on, and prepared for whatever was about to happen. The 18 years of police work had taught him to stay calm under pressure. 12 years of trauma surgery had taught him to function in chaos. But nothing had prepared him for being treated like a criminal at an airport gate while traveling for a federal medical conference. The 3 ICE agents closed the distance, their formation tightening, their body language screaming enforcement action. Around them, passengers were beginning to notice, conversations trailing off, attention shifting to the unfolding scene. The most expensive gate in federal court history was about to earn its title. Chapter 2. Thorne's hands stayed visible, moving to rest on his knees in the universal language of non-threat. 18 years wearing a badge had taught him how to read tactical formations, how to understand when officers had already decided you were dangerous, how to survive encounters where assumptions could turn fatal. These agents had made their assumptions. Agent Reed held center position, approaching directly while his partners spread wide. Gable moved left toward the gate desk, cutting off that direction. Vane shifted right toward the windows, blocking retreat toward the seating area. A perfect triangle formation that put Thorne in the center with no easy exit. It was textbook high-risk approach tactics. The same formation Thorne had used when serving felony warrants, when approaching armed suspects, when the situation required maximum control and minimum risk to officers. You positioned your team in a triangle because it provided overlapping coverage, eliminated blind spots. He prevented the target from attacking one officer without being exposed to the others. They were using it on a police lieutenant waiting to board a flight to a medical conference. "Sir, stand up. Immigration and Customs Enforcement." Reed's voice carried across the gate area, loud enough that every passenger could hear. Loud enough to be humiliating, which was probably intentional. Thorne stood slowly, deliberately, keeping his movements visible and controlled. "Officers, I'm Lieutenant Silas Thorne, Metro Police Department. I'm also a VA surgeon. I'm traveling to Washington, D.C. for a medical conference. Is there something I can help you with?" Reed's expression remained bureaucratically neutral. "We're conducting verification operations. We need to see identification and documentation. My wallet is in my inside jacket pocket. My federal medical credentials are in my carry-on. I'm going to reach for my wallet slowly. Is that acceptable? Don't move. Keep your hands visible." The tactical spacing tightened. Gable took a half step closer from the left. Vane adjusted his angle from the right. They were hurting him, controlling his movement options, treating him exactly like they'd treat a dangerous suspect, despite his professional attire and calm demeanor. Around them, the gate had gone completely silent. Business travelers stared. Families pulled children closer. The gate agent had paused mid-announcement, her expression shifting from confusion to concern. Near the window, businessman Briggs Pendergast had his phone raised, recording with the steady hands of someone who understood exactly how important documentation would be. Another passenger, and a young woman with her laptop, was also filming, her face showing the kind of moral outrage that couldn't be manufactured. Witnesses, evidence. Every camera in the terminal was probably capturing this from multiple angles. Thorne looked at each agent in turn, making sure their body cameras caught his calm demeanor, his visible hands, his complete lack of aggression. Then he looked directly at Reed's camera. For the record, I'm Lieutenant Silas Thorne, Metro PD Badge 5142. I'm also Dr. Silas Thorne, VA Medical Center, Phoenix. I'm being detained at Gate B4 without apparent reasonable suspicion while attempting to board a domestic flight. This appears to be a Fourth Amendment violation. Reed's jaw tightened. Sir, we're going to need you to cooperate. I am cooperating, Agent Reed. Thorne read the name off the agent's vest, making sure every camera caught it. You asked for identification. My wallet is in my inside jacket pocket. I'm going to retrieve it slowly with 2 fingers. Please don't mistake compliance for resistance. The absurdity wasn't lost on him, a police lieutenant having to narrate his movements to avoid being shot while complying with a request for ID at an airport gate. But 18 years of experience had taught him that compliance meant nothing if the people with guns had already decided you were a threat. He reached into his jacket with deliberate care, extracted his wallet with 2 fingers, held it out. Reed snatched it, examined the contents like he was looking for contraband instead of identification. Arizona driver's license, current and valid. Metro PD badge and credentials. Credit cards. EVA Medical Center ID card with his photo and federal employee number clearly visible. Reed barely glanced at them. This doesn't prove legal status. It's a valid state-issued driver's license and federal employee credentials. I'm Lieutenant Silas Thorne. I'm also Dr. Thorne, a cardiothoracic surgeon specializing in combat trauma. I was born at Phoenix General Hospital 46 years ago. I'm a natural-born United States citizen. Then you'll have documentation, birth certificate, passport, naturalization papers. I don't carry my birth certificate when traveling to medical conferences, Agent Reed, and I don't need naturalization papers because I was born in this country. Phoenix, Arizona, United States of America. Thorne pulled his VA medical credentials from his carry-on, held them up for the cameras. See federal employee ID with his photo, title, and security clearance level. This is my federal identification. I'm a government employee. I work at the VA Medical Center. I save veterans' lives. Call the VA. Call Metro PD. Call anyone. My identity can be verified in under 2 minutes. Reed pocketed the wallet without looking at the VA credentials. Everyone claims to be somebody important when we stop them. Everyone you stop, or everyone who looks like me that you stop? Thorne let the question hang in the silent terminal. Because I notice you didn't ask the white businessman over there for papers, didn't demand naturalization certificates from the white family's boarding. Just me. So let's talk about the operational intelligence that led you to single out a black doctor at a domestic gate. The watching passengers murmured agreement. See, someone called out, "He's a doctor! He showed you his ID!" Another voice. "This is racial profiling." Gable, positioned to Thorne's left, spoke for the first time. "Sir, if you're refusing to provide documentation..." "I'm not refusing anything." Thorne held up his VA credentials again. "This is my federal government identification. Dr. Silas Thorne, Department of Veterans Affairs, GS-15 level physician. Security clearance level 3. Federal employee number visible right here. Call the VA operator. Call federal personnel. Verify my identity right now instead of pretending a federal employee ID isn't sufficient documentation." He pulled out a business card from his wallet. Silas Thorne, MD, FACS, cardiothoracic surgery, Phoenix VA Medical Center, and held it up for every camera. "This is my business card, my medical credentials, my federal employment. All verifiable immediately." Reed's expression hardened. "We'll verify everything downtown. You're being detained for processing." I'm not going downtown. I'm boarding a flight to a medical conference where I'm presenting research that could save veterans' lives. You have my federal credentials. You have multiple immediate ways to verify my identity. There's no legal justification for detention. If this story is resonating with you, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. Agent Reed, Thorne's voice carried across Gate B4, clear and deliberate for every recording device, every security camera, every passenger phone capturing this encounter. I'm going to explain this once as both a law enforcement officer and as someone who actually understands constitutional law. The Fourth Amendment protects all persons from unreasonable searches and seizures. Terry v. Ohio established that law enforcement may conduct brief investigative stops only with reasonable suspicion based on specific and articulable facts. You've provided no such facts. Reed stepped closer, attempting to use his physical presence for intimidation. At an airport gate, in front of hundreds of witnesses. Sir, final warning. Furthermore, Thorne continued, not backing down despite 3 federal agents surrounding him in a public terminal. You're conducting an enforcement operation at a domestic gate. I'm traveling to Washington, D.C., not internationally. I've shown you federal government credentials. I'm a police lieutenant and a VA surgeon. Your stop is not only unconstitutional, it's professionally incompetent. The gate area had swelled with watchers. Passengers from neighboring gates had drifted over, sensing something significant was happening. Briggs Pendergast had moved closer with his phone, positioning himself to capture everything. Multiple other passengers were recording now, creating a documentary record from every angle. I'm invoking my Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable seizure. I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment rights. I do not consent to this detention. I do not consent to any search. I am clearly articulating for your body cameras, these airport security cameras, and these civilian witnesses that I'm a United States citizen, a police lieutenant, a federal employee, I'm being illegally detained without reasonable suspicion at a domestic airport gate. Vane moved in from the right, handcuffs already visible in his hand. You're being detained for verification of legal status. Resistance will result in additional charges. I'm not resisting. I'm asserting my constitutional rights. Every law enforcement officer in this country knows the difference. You're choosing to conflate them because you've already decided who I am based on how I look. Gable grabbed Thorne's left arm, twisting it behind his back. Thorne didn't fight. Fighting would give them the justification they wanted and could turn deadly in an airport. But he didn't help either. His body went completely limp, forcing the agent to support his full weight. For the record, Thorne's voice remained steady despite the pain shooting through his shoulder. It's 6:52 p.m. on Tuesday, November 14th. I'm being physically restrained at Gate B4, Sky Harbor International Airport. I have not threatened anyone. I have not attempted to flee. I have not committed any crime. I identified myself as a police officer and federal employee. I showed federal credentials. I offered to verify my identity. I'm being arrested anyway, because 3 ICE agents decided a black man at an airport gate must be illegal. A voice from the crowd, elderly, indignant, cut through the tension. This is wrong. He's a doctor. He showed you his federal ID. Let him go. The outrage was genuine, the kind that comes from witnessing injustice too blatant to ignore. Would the businessman, Pendergast, called out in a lawyer's voice, I'm recording everything. I'm a witness to this unlawful detention. This man has federal credentials. Reed's response was sharp. Sir, step back, or you'll be detained for interfering with a federal operation. But the phones kept recording. The passengers kept watching. And Lieutenant Silas Thorne, 18-year police veteran and 12-year federal surgeon, kept narrating every violation for the evidence that would eventually cost these agents their careers and the government $16.8 million. The handcuffs closed around Thorne's wrists with a metallic click that seemed to echo through the entire terminal. Too tight, deliberately so. The steel biting into skin in a way that had nothing to do with officer safety and everything to do with punishing someone who'd dared to assert their rights. I'm not resisting, Thorne announced clearly, his voice projecting across Gate B4 for every witness, every camera, every recording device. I'm not fighting. I'm exercising passive non-compliance with an unlawful arrest. Gable grabbed his right arm, Vane his left. They tried to walk him away from the gate, but Thorne let every muscle go slack. Dead weight. All 185 pounds of him became a burden they had to drag across the airport terminal floor. Sir, you need to walk. I'm being unlawfully arrested at an airport gate while attempting to travel for a federal medical conference. I'm not going to assist in my own constitutional violation. And you want to detain a police lieutenant and VA surgeon illegally in front of hundreds of witnesses? You're going to have to physically carry me. It was a technique he'd seen in civil rights footage, in protest videos, in training materials about nonviolent resistance. He'd arrested people who'd used this exact tactic during demonstrations. Never imagined he'd use it himself at an airport, being detained by federal agents who refused to verify his credentials. They dragged him past the gate desk, past the shocked passengers waiting to board, past the families pulling children close and asking quiet questions about why the police were hurting that man. His shoes scraped against the polished terminal floor, his sport coat riding up, his professional appearance dissolving into the indignity of being hauled through an airport like cargo. I'm being dragged through Sky Harbor International Airport at 6:54 p.m., Thorne narrated for the recordings. My shoulder is being wrenched. The handcuffs are cutting off circulation. This is excessive force applied to a non-resistant federal employee who has committed no crime. The businessman, Pendergast, was following at a safe distance, phone still raised, recording everything. This is unlawful detention. I'm documenting this. This man showed federal credentials. Sir, final warning. I'm an attorney. I know what I'm witnessing. This is a constitutional violation, and I'm preserving evidence. Other passengers had joined the documentation effort. Phones tracking the agents as they dragged Thorne through the terminal, past other gates where travelers stopped to watch, past concession stands where workers emerged to see the commotion. They reached a service corridor, away from the main terminal. A white van sat waiting, engine running. Federal prisoner transport, the same kind used for deportation operations. Reed opened the rear door, steel mesh partition, vinyl seats, no interior handles. The cage where they put people they'd decided were criminals. Vane shoved Thorne inside without care for the shoulder already strained from being wrenched behind his back. Thorne couldn't catch himself with his hands cuffed, hit the vinyl seat hard, his head striking the steel mesh partition with enough force to split his scalp. Blood. Warm and wet, trickling down his temple. More evidence of excessive force. He sat up awkwardly, hands still cuffed behind him, blood running down his face, and looked directly at Reed's body camera. It's 6:57 p.m. I'm Lieutenant Silas Thorne. A Metro PD Badge 5142. I'm Dr. Silas Thorne, VA Medical Center, Phoenix. I've been unlawfully arrested at Gate B4, assaulted during detention, and am being transported against my will. I want every badge number, every name, every frame of footage preserved for the federal lawsuit I will file. The door slammed. Through the tinted windows, he could see Pendergast still recording, could see other passengers clustered at the corridor entrance, documenting the federal government arresting a police lieutenant and VA surgeon for the crime of being black at an airport. The federal detention facility holding cell was 10 feet by 10 feet of institutional architecture designed to break human dignity. Concrete block walls painted the kind of beige that looked diseased under fluorescent lighting. A metal bench bolted to the floor. A toilet in the corner with no seat or privacy screen. The lights hummed with a frequency calculated to induce headaches. The air smelled like industrial cleaner, fighting a losing battle against accumulated despair. This was the machinery. The processing center where constitutional rights disappeared into bureaucratic procedures, where doctors became case numbers and citizens became subjects requiring verification. They'd removed his handcuffs during intake, photographed him from multiple angles like he was evidence instead of a person, fingerprinted him with the mechanical efficiency of people who'd stopped seeing detainees as human. Nobody made eye contact. Nobody answered his questions about his rights to a phone call or legal counsel. He was a unit moving through their system. Personal effects. The intake officer, Corbin, her nameplate read, gestured to a plastic bin. Phone, wallet, watch, belt, tie. Thorne handed over his smartphone showing 31 missed calls, probably the conference organizers wondering where he was, his VA supervisor asking why he hadn't checked in, colleagues concerned about his silence, his wallet, with credentials these agents had dismissed, his father's watch, given to him when he graduated medical school, his belt and tie, as if those posed some threat in a holding cell. I want to make a phone call. I'm entitled to contact. After processing. I'm a federal employee. I'm a police officer. I have a medical conference presentation in 36 hours. You're preventing me from fulfilling my professional obligations. Corbin's expression didn't flicker. Just following procedures. Just doing her job. At the same excuse that had echoed through every bureaucracy that had ever participated in systematic injustice. Cell 3. The door buzzed open electronically. The space smelled like industrial cleaner and institutional fear. Thorne stepped inside, heard the lock engage with a finality that made his stomach clench despite all his training. He sat on the metal bench, cold despite the Arizona heat outside, and let the reality settle. He was in custody. An 18-year police veteran, a federal employee, a surgeon who saved veterans' lives, detained like a criminal for trying to board a domestic flight. The irony was crushing. How many people had he arrested in 18 years? How many suspects had he processed, telling them it's procedure while they protested their innocence? He'd always believed the system would sort out truth from lies, so that innocent people wouldn't stay detained once their identity was verified. Now he was the one protesting his identity, the one insisting he'd done nothing wrong, the one experiencing the gap between how the justice system was supposed to work and how it actually worked when you were black and presumed guilty until proven otherwise. He thought about his patients at the VA, combat veterans who'd trusted him with their lives, who'd survived wars only to come home and face this same system of presumed criminality. He thought about the presentation he'd miss, the research on trauma surgery that could save lives. He thought about the other doctors at the conference who'd wonder where he was. The clock visible through the small window in his cell door read 8:23 p.m., over an hour in custody. His flight had departed without him. The conference organizers would be confused. His VA supervisor would be calling, getting no answer. But he'd disappeared into federal processing, deliberately isolated, deliberately denied communication. Just like thousands of others detained based on demographic profiles instead of facts. Thorne pulled a pen from his sock. Years of police work had taught him where intake searches usually missed, and started writing on his palm. Times, badge numbers, names. Every detail documented. When this ended, the lawsuit would be airtight. The evidence overwhelming. 3 hours, he calculated. They'd keep him 3 hours before someone realized they'd detained a federal employee and police officer. He settled in to wait, to document, and to prepare for the legal battle that would change federal enforcement policy. D. Ledger Kincaid had supervised federal detention operations for 13 years, long enough to recognize when a situation was about to detonate into career-ending catastrophe. The call from the VA Medical Center director at 9:17 p.m. triggered every warning system in his body. Ledger, where is Dr. Silas Thorne? He was supposed to check into his D.C. hotel 3 hours ago. The conference has him presenting on Friday, and we have viral video of ICE agents arresting someone who looks exactly like him at Sky Harbor. Kincaid's blood went cold. Dr. Thorne? VA surgeon? What? Find him. Now. Before this becomes an interagency incident. He pulled up the evening's operation log. Airport terminal verification. Authorized by Agent Jettison Reed. Intelligence-based enforcement targeting suspicious travelers at domestic gates. At vague language hiding what was probably racial profiling. 1 detention. Unidentified male. Verification pending. Transported from Gate B4. Oh God. Not just a doctor. A VA surgeon. A federal employee. He was moving before conscious thought caught up. Down 3 flights, through security, into intake. Corbin looked up, immediately reading disaster in his expression. The subject from the airport. Where is he? Cell 3. Won't provide documentation beyond a driver's license and federal employee ID. Claims he's a police lieutenant and VA surgeon. Show me his intake photo. Now. Corbin pulled it up. Black male, mid-40s, professional attire now disheveled, head wound bleeding, expression of controlled fury that somehow made him look more authoritative. And unmistakably, Dr. Silas Thorne, whose photo Kincaid had seen in federal employee directories, whose research on combat trauma had been featured in VA publications. They'd arrested a VA surgeon, a police lieutenant, a federal employee traveling to present medical research. This wasn't a mistake. This was a catastrophe that would trigger investigations, congressional hearings, and lawsuits that would cost millions. Kincaid accessed the evidence locker, Arizona driver's license, Metro PD badge, and credentials. VA Medical Center federal employee ID. Business cards. Silas Thorne, MD, FACS. Phone showing 67 missed calls from numbers labeled VA Director, Conference Organizer, Metro PD Captain. He grabbed everything and ran to cell 3. Through the window, he could see Thorne sitting calmly, writing on his palm, documenting everything. He opened the door. Thorne looked up, unsurprised. "Dr. Thorne, Lieutenant, I'm Supervisor Ledger Kincaid. There's been a terrible mistake. I sincerely apologize for this inconvenience." "Inconvenience?" Thorne stood slowly. "Is that what you call illegally detaining a federal employee? An inconvenience? I understand you're upset. I'm a VA surgeon who was supposed to present combat trauma research at a federal medical conference. I'm a police lieutenant with an unblemished record. I spent 3 hours in that cell because your agents decided a black man at an airport gate must be illegal. That's not an inconvenience. That's a constitutional violation." Kincaid felt his career dissolving. "We'll immediately begin an internal review. You'll preserve evidence for my federal lawsuit. Every moment of my detention documented. Every agent's name and badge number. Every frame of body camera footage. Every second of airport security footage. All of it preserved. Of course, we'll cooperate fully." "I don't want cooperation. I want accountability. Those 3 agents violated my constitutional rights, caused me to miss a federal medical conference, and humiliated me in front of hundreds of witnesses. I'm suing them personally, and your agency institutionally." Thorne walked past him, posture straight, despite 3 hours of detention and a bleeding head wound. "My personal effects, my luggage, which is probably still at the airport, and immediate transportation back to Sky Harbor, where I was illegally arrested. We'll arrange everything. You'll cooperate with my attorney, Sutton Phelan, civil rights litigation. He's going to destroy your agency's defense. See, and I'm going to make sure every federal employee, every traveler, every person who saw that viral video knows what your agents did." Thorne collected his belongings, checked his phone, 67 missed calls, frantic texts from colleagues and supervisors. The viral video already had 6 million views. He walked out with the controlled fury of someone who'd just experienced the machinery of injustice and now had both the credentials and the platform to dismantle it. Kincaid watched him go and started updating his resume. By morning, this would be national news, and he needed distance from the catastrophe. The trial began 19 months later in federal district court, though calling it a trial suggested uncertainty about the outcome. By the time attorney Sutton Phelan finished his opening statement, the Department of Justice defense team looked like they regretted not settling for the initial $12 million demand. Phelan was 53, a civil rights litigation specialist who'd won landmark cases against federal agencies. He stood before the jury, 8 women, 4 men, professionally diverse, and delivered an opening that would be studied in law schools for years. "Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Silas Thorne went to board a flight. He's an 18-year police veteran. He's a VA surgeon who saves veterans' lives. And 3 ICE agents decided he looked illegal. Not because he'd committed a crime, not because they had intelligence, but because he was black, standing at an airport gate in professional attire, and in their minds, that was suspicious." He clicked a remote. The monitors showed body camera footage from Agent Reed's perspective. To timestamp 6:47:33 p.m. "Watch. You'll see Dr. Thorne sitting quietly, reviewing medical presentation slides. Professional. Calm. Now, watch the agents. They're not responding to a threat. They're scanning passengers. And when they see Dr. Thorne, everything changes. Watch their body language. They've selected a target." The footage showed the approach, the triangle formation, the escalation. Thorne identifying himself repeatedly, showing federal credentials and police badge, explaining constitutional law, while Reed reached for handcuffs. All captured in the sterile lighting of an airport terminal with hundreds of witnesses. 6 jurors were taking notes. Others watched with expressions ranging from shock to outrage. The airport security footage came next, multiple angles showing Thorne being dragged through the terminal. So the civilian footage from Briggs Pendergast followed, raw, unedited, showing a federal employee and police officer being treated like a criminal. The blood on Thorne's face when they shoved him into the van. Passengers protesting, children asking why the police were hurting the doctor. 5 jurors were visibly upset. The defense attorney tried damage control, training, protocols, operational intelligence, the brief detention, only 3 hours, and Thorne's release without charges. Then Phelan called Agent Reed to the stand. Agent Reed, you testified you had operational intelligence about suspicious travelers. What made Dr. Thorne suspicious? He matched parameters for our verification sweep. What parameters? Specifically? Demographic indicators suggesting possible verification needs. Demographic indicators. You mean he was black and professionally dressed? We were looking for individuals who appeared. Dr. Thorne is a VA surgeon. He's a police lieutenant. He was traveling to present medical research at a federal conference. What made him appear suspicious except his skin color? Silence. The white businessman sitting near him. Did you approach him? No. The white family's boarding. Did you demand their papers? No. But you approached Dr. Thorne, a federal employee with government credentials. What specific facts justified that decision? We were following our protocols. Show me the protocol for profiling federal employees. Show me the training that says arrest VA surgeons at domestic gates. Show me anything that justifies detaining a man who showed you federal government ID. He couldn't. As the jury watched him fail to articulate any reasoning beyond racial profiling. Deliberation, 13 hours. Verdict, unanimous. Constitutional violation, civil rights deprivation, false arrest, excessive force, interference with federal employment. Damages, $16.8 million. The courtroom erupted. Thorne sat quietly, thinking about his patients who'd never get justice this way. The settlement arrived 16 weeks later. $16.8 million, the largest civil rights judgment in the circuit's history. After legal fees, Thorne had resources that exceeded most people's lifetime earnings. He reported for his VA surgery shift the next morning, performed 3 cardiac procedures, and saved 2 veterans' lives. But everything had changed. Agent Jettison Reed resigned before formal discipline, his federal career over. Agents Gable and Vane were reassigned to desk positions indefinitely. Supervisor Ledger Kincaid took early retirement. The Department of Homeland Security announced sweeping reforms. No enforcement at domestic airport gates without specific criminal probable cause, mandatory verification of credentials presented, supervisor approval for all detentions, body camera preservation requirements, quarterly civil rights audits. The Thorne case became the training example of catastrophic profiling. But Thorne knew policy changes weren't enough. Real change required resources for people who couldn't fight back the way he had. He created the Federal Employee Civil Rights Defense Fund with $14 million of his settlement. The nonprofit provided free legal representation to federal employees and travelers detained without reasonable suspicion. It trained communities on constitutional rights during airport encounters. It tracked profiling patterns and brought lawsuits relentlessly against agencies that violated protections. First year, 516 clients represented, 387 cases won, $19.3 million in additional settlements, funding expansion. 10 attorneys grew to 38, 4 offices to 22, regional impact to national influence. Lieutenant Silas Thorne stayed on the force and at the VA, but changed how he served. Every patient he treated, every shift he worked, he remembered cell 3 and 3 hours stolen for presenting while black. He became the doctor who changed ICE, though he'd correct people. I didn't change ICE, I exposed them. Real change comes from pressure, from consequences, and from refusing to accept that federal employees can be profiled at airports. 8 years after Gate B4, Dr. Thorne was chief of surgery at the VA, captain at Metro PD. He'd presented his combat trauma research at dozens of conferences, sometimes showing the viral video during his introduction, explaining how systemic bias nearly prevented life-saving research from being shared. The video still circulated, footage of a VA surgeon being dragged through an airport. It became a symbol, a reminder that credentials didn't protect you from racism. On each anniversary, Thorne flew through Sky Harbor, past Gate B4. Same terminal, same professional attire. He traveled without incident, greeted by TSA agents and airline staff who remembered, who'd witnessed, who'd helped change policies. Progress wasn't one dramatic verdict, and it was making it possible for the next black professional to travel without 3 agents deciding they looked illegal. That day hadn't fully arrived, but because of what happened at Gate B4, because of the $16.8 million judgment, because of the fund and thousands of cases it supported, That day was closer than before. Dr. Silas Thorne had paid the price for systemic bias. He was making sure the system paid everything. One lawsuit, one saved veteran, one protected traveler at a time.